If gliding over the crime-riddled streets of Gotham City, beating criminals within an inch of their lives, and blasting through the streets in the Batmobile as the eminent Dark Knight sounds even remotely appealing to you, odds are pretty good that Batman Arkham Knight is a game you should probably check out if you haven't already. The Arkham series that got started during the 7th generation of gaming consoles wasn't the huge success it was for no reason, and it hasn't garnered the legions of fans it has by accident.
Our presence in our institution is temporary.
What? Don't you trust me?
The Arkham series has become a staple in gaming history and has delivered great games with every iteration so far. While we await what's next for the series, for now, let's take a close look at just why the series took off the way it did and carved out a huge audience for itself in the gaming space, where Batman had been neglected for far too long prior.
Listen to me carefully. When they open the door, do not panic. Stay close to me.
Do you think I'm taking advice from some guy who's never even been in a fight?
Stay calm. They're trying to scare us.
Sorry, man. It's every man for himself. Just the beginner! Wait, help me!
The Arkham games' greatest strength has always been their execution, especially in the original game, Arkham Asylum. Implementing gameplay mechanics from other popular action-adventure games of that era, as well as a few other unique ideas of their own, really paid off with the first game, Arkham Asylum, and continued to do so with its sequel, Arkham City. While City played it safe with a conservative amount of changes from Asylum in most regards, what it did usher in was the era of open-world Batman. While the Arkham Asylum was a large, explorable game world that could be considered open world in a technical sense, it was the next game, Arkham City, that took the series to the streets of Gotham, where most would agree it really belonged. And it would stay that way for the next game, Arkham Origins. While these 3 games were all great in their own ways, it wasn't until the 8th generation of gaming consoles unleashed the real potential of an open-world Batman game and lifted the veil on what they could be with Arkham Knight. As any Bat fan in 2015 would expect, all the favorite Bat gadgets and core gameplay mechanics from the previous games made a return. The free-flowing combat system that many had grown to love was back, and fine-tuned with more moves and flexibility. The grappling hook, line launcher, and batarangs were all here and kicked up a notch with better animations. On top of that, the Dark Knight's stealth and detective mode mechanics were broadened out to include more sorts of complex scenarios that broke up the action and gave the game that great sense of pacing that longtime fans of the Bat will recognize from the animated series. Speaking of the animated series, the outstanding Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill return in their iconic roles as Batman and Joker, along with other Arkham veterans, Steve Blum as Killer Croc and Jonathan Banks as Commissioner Gordon. This is just scratching the surface of the voice talent on display in Arkham Knight though, and the potency of this voice acting roster is an unavoidable part of what made the game so great. On top of the fancy voice acting, Arkham Knight brought in the biggest innovation of the series since taking it full-on open world, the inclusion of the Batmobile. The Batmobile wasn't just thrown in though, it would be the centerpiece of many of the game's missions, as well as a preferable mode of travel through Gotham in some cases, depending on the situation. The Batmobile even changed the city design philosophy in a fundamental way, reportedly as the streets of the previous 2 games would need to be reworked and significantly widened to allow for fun, seamless travel in the vehicle. What's more, the Batmobile wasn't just the Batmobile. It was also a battle tank when necessary. Entering battle mode would significantly change how the vehicle played, with a strafing ability, more tactical movement, and an additional arsenal of weaponry revealed while in battle mode. As if that weren't enough, the Batmobile would have multiple upgrades and unlockable abilities that would become available as you progress through the game, much like Batman himself. Driving the Batmobile in its normal form felt fantastic though. Seeing a game series that was all about combat and detective work bring in such a huge driving element and do such a great job at it was impressive by any measure. So whether you were pursuing a villain with the Batmobile's intense speed and total disregard for traffic laws, or taking out enemy tanks with its overwhelming firepower, this part of the game is surely a big part of what made it so great to fans of the series and newcomers alike. While some would say that this element of the game was perhaps overused somewhat, and that is certainly a valid critique, one can still understand why Rocksteady was so excited to show off the Batmobile and its wealth of functionality. Adding new vehicular elements wasn't all Rocksteady did though. Arkham Knight laid out more tweaks to the fundamental elements of the game than any game before it to make it really feel like the step up that it was. The combat, for starters, got a fair amount of shakeups. Where only the larger bruiser-style enemies could do charge and tackle attacks in previous games, now any enemy could theoretically do it under the right circumstance, making even common thugs more dangerous. This threat is compounded by another element that Arkham Knight brought out: enemy medics. These guys can revive previously defeated enemies, as well as shield those who are currently engaging Batman. This gives them priority over most other enemies, establishing a twist to the "who should I take out next" question that Arkham players so frequently ask themselves. This, combined with other things like hacking enemy drones, fear takedowns that allow you to seamlessly take out multiple enemies at once, and switching out Batman's allies in real time during a fight to further accelerate your combat score, are all things that add up to quite a deeper combat experience, and one that makes the previous games feel more like a prelude to what would ultimately become the series of mechanics of Arkham Knight. While the story of Arkham Knight doesn't soar above the previous games like the combat or traversal does, it's still a rather good Batman tale, with all of the deception, urgency, and sprinkles of neo-noir flair that you would expect from any of the better movies or episodes of the animated series. Without spoiling too much, I'll admit that even though it's arguably as good as any of the other games, that's still a fairly high bar to meet that Arkham Knight indeed does. The central mystery that the game's story revolves around is a good one, and if you give yourself up to it and don't spend too much time trying to predict the next development, it gives you more than enough motivation to see it through. Arkham Knight came out several years ago. As a result, its various mechanics and systems have been iterated upon and improved on by other games many times in the years since. This is why, if you make a game that you want to stay memorable beyond just a few years than just a serviceable bevy of elements that other games already have, you need something special on top of everything else to really stand out. Arkham Knight goes so far with and leans so heavily on that unique mix of stylized, thrilling noir mystery and flexible action that only a Batman game could provide, that it becomes far more than the sum of its parts. Like all great games before it, Arkham Knight will continue to be great long after its mechanics and methods are obsolete, while some might still prefer Arkham City, Origins, or even Asylum for their own personal reasons. It's pretty hard not to see that Batman Arkham Knight is, quite certainly, one hell of a game. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.